Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at.
This was the only way we could protect our constituents and protect the state.
Texas lawmakers flee to Illinois to block a redistricting vote as the state's governor calls for their arrest. Have local reaction. Poor air quality lingers as Canadian wildfire smoke moves across the city. What you can do to stay safe.
I'm Billie Jean.
And a new play brings the life of tennis icon and activist Billie Jean King to the stage. And now to some of today's top stories. Amid a backlog of 3.5 million immigration cases, U.S. Senator Dick Durbin says the Trump administration is weaponizing the system by firing judges. He met with several of them today.
I was fired by email while on a family vacation. No cause, no notice, no reason. Since January 2025, I've watched my professional colleagues and friends, over 100 of them, be either fired, resign, or transferred to other government jobs. Even more judges have simply quit.
16 more Chicago public schools are now deemed sustainable community schools.
The Sustainable Community Schools model helps to transform schools into the hubs in their communities based on the needs of our families. It is a model that's specifically designed to prioritize investments in the historically disinvested communities.
This brings the total number of schools using the sustainable school model to 36 in the coming academic year, up from 20. CPS launched the SCS model in 2018 to include wraparound supports for schools, as well as restorative justice discipline, parent engagement, and inclusive school leadership. The city says the new schools will see additional mental health support, more mentorship programs, and increased access to job and housing resources. For a list of those new schools, you can visit our website. And one of the birding community's beloved piping plovers has died. Ferris was one of the 3 chicks that hatched at Montrose Beach this year, but the 6-week-old plover was killed by a red-tailed hawk midday Saturday, a reminder of the many hazards that the endangered Great Lakes piping plovers face. The other 2 chicks, Bean and Elle, weren't present when the attack occurred. The group Chicago Piping Plovers confirmed the 2 are safe at Chicago's 63rd Street Beach, still preparing for their first southern migration. Up next, controversy in Texas lands Lone Star State lawmakers here in Chicago. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Jin and Kay Mabee family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, is ordering the arrest of his Democratic state lawmakers. The move comes after Democratic members of the Texas House fled the state, arriving here in Illinois and New York in an attempt to block a vote on a new congressional map. That map would expand the number of Republican-leaning congressional seats by 5. Here's what some Texas lawmakers had to say.
Gerrymandering is a problem in a lot of states, not just red states, but blue states too. Democrats and Republicans both gerrymander. Now, this power grab in Texas is a different level. It is more brazen, it is more egregious, it is more discriminatory, and it's happening in the middle of the decade because the President of the United States directly requested 5 more seats so that he doesn't have to face accountability in the midterm elections, which is incredibly dangerous if we expect that people can hold their elected officials accountable.
They're not mad that states are redistricting for partisan purposes. They're mad that a Republican state is doing it. The United States Constitution and the Constitution of the great state of Texas absolutely allows us to undergo this type of redistricting effort. So we're doing something that's completely legal, it's completely constitutional, and I'm doing everything I can in my power as an elected member of the state of Texas to make sure that the state of Texas does everything in its power to make sure that Republicans hold on to a majority in the United States Congress.
So joining us now are Illinois House Republican leader Tony McCombie and Harold Krent, professor of law at Chicago-Kent College of Law. We should mention we did invite many Democratic members of the Illinois state legislature to join us, but they either declined or did not immediately return our messages. We thank Leader McCombie and Professor Krent for joining us.
Thank you.
So, Professor, I want to start with you, please. Explain how we got to this point.
Well, the Supreme Court has said that they're not going to interfere with political redistricting in any of the states. So red state, blue state, it doesn't matter. You can politically gerrymander to your heart's content. It doesn't do well for a unified country. It only basically intensifies partisanship. But that's what Texas is starting, and Illinois is threatening to fight back, as is New Jersey and California. And so we'll have a race to the gerrymandered districts. I don't think that's going to mean anybody's best interest, but the president has sort of sparked it, and we're going to see where it leads to.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to that conversation about some blue states attempting to redistrict in so-called retaliation. Professor, is this an unusual move to redistrict in the middle of the decade, so far out from the most recent census?
I mean, it's somewhat unusual, but there's been periods in the past, and indeed, this isn't the first walkout by Texas legislatures. Democrats periodically have fled to neighboring states to try to avoid some kind of showdown, most recently in 2021 over voting rights changes. So this kind of politics at this kind of granular level does arise, as does redistricting. And, I just think this is not going to be any good for the country.
Leader McCombie, what do you make of the Texas Democrats' move?
Well, first off, gerrymandering, he's right. It is ridiculous what is being done all around our nation. And Illinois doesn't have to threaten anything because we are already completely redistricted. As you're aware, we have a 78-40 majority in the House, and we should, by fair mapping, we should have 11 more seats, which still puts us in the minority, but certainly shouldn't be this vast. With not having a balanced government, it's a bad government for Republicans and Democrats. I get their plight there in Texas, being outvoted and outnumbered. It's not easy, but you have to stay and you have to fight. You can't, and it wasn't just about that vote. This particular session was also about the flood victims. So it's unfortunate that they've decided to change our definition of a sanctuary state.
Leader, and sort of to the point about gerrymandering, what do you think? What do you make of the state of Texas deciding to redistrict and draw new maps in the year 2025 versus the way most states have done it? And obviously, as Professor Krent said, they can do this. But what do you make of it?
Yeah, well, as you're aware, we did file a lawsuit to actually try to do it here. We lost on the fact of gerrymandering. So I understand if there's a situation we were the opposite. We had a study done, and we found that there was 52 gerrymandered districts. Illinois has one of the most gerrymandered states nationwide. I think Congresswoman Bodzicki has the most gerrymandered congressional seat in the nation. So it's not healthy to have this happen in any state. Like I said, we have to have balanced government to have good government.
Professor Krent, Texas Governor Greg Abbott, as we mentioned, he has ordered the arrest of those Democratic state lawmakers. He's threatening to remove them from office. Does he have that authority?
Okay, let me answer both sides of the question. First of all, is we have our jurisdiction of the law enforcement only extends to the boundary of the state, and so the states have no authority, law enforcement, across border lines. So if they sent their law enforcement into Illinois, they'd be rogues, they'd be outlaws, and subject to Illinois law. So there's been some kind of semblance of these flare-ups from time to time in our history, and I think it's pretty clear that there's no kind of crossing state lines in terms of actually arresting these individuals who are in Illinois. Now, secondly, does he have the legal authority? He says that these individuals have abandoned their positions, and so that he can call for new elections and appoint interim because of their abandonment. But that's not what abandonment means. They have an intent to return. They haven't renounced their interest in becoming legislature. In fact, they're doing this because of their interest in being legislators. In addition, under Texas law, it's pretty unclear that the governor has the power even to appoint replacements. All he can do is order special elections. So for both those reasons, he can't appoint a successor. They haven't abandoned, and he can't arrest them. This is a stalemate. The stalemate's going to continue at least for weeks. However, how long it's going to last is anybody's guess. There is a fine, $500 per day for the legislatures that they're facing. That can be pretty steep after a couple of weeks. So maybe a couple of them will go back, and as we've seen in the past, and this divisive gerrymander will continue.
Leader McCombie, Governor Pritzker has said at a news conference in DuPage County, he said, quote, "Let's be clear, this is not just rigging the system in Texas. It is about rigging the system against the rights of all Americans for years to come." What are your thoughts on what Governor Pritzker is saying? Because he, at the same time, has given refuge to the Texas lawmakers who are here.
Yeah, certainly he did roll out the red carpet. I strongly disagree with the governor on this issue. He ran his first election stating that he would never sign a partisan map that was drawn a map drawn by legislators. And he did. He went against his own campaign promise, and he did sign it. And that's unfortunate. I think for him to be getting involved with this is certainly he's a hypocrite for being a part of this, because Texas and other states are responding to the actions that are done in states like ours. This is just a result of that, in my opinion. I think, when you're talking about democracy and they do leave the House in Texas, your voice is your vote. And so if you're not voting, that's where your voice is. So the governor had said that, and you got to be there to vote.
Professor, the Texas House, they failed to meet a quorum today. Of course, they adjourned until tomorrow. But what is the timeline here? And they have to go home at some point. Couldn't this still pass when they get back, or could it?
Oh, absolutely, it could pass. But the question is, how long is that going to last? I mean, it has to be done with enough time before the midterm election to make a difference. I think that, the governor here is saying, look, this is really kind of outrageous that this kind of redistricting is happening because the president wants you to do it so close to the midterms. And so to give refuge for these legislators just makes sense of trying to hold the fort and not have California and New Jersey as blue states try to match what the red state Texas has done.
Leader McCombie,
the only answer, by the way,
well, we've got about 40 seconds left. Yeah, it's okay. We've got 40 seconds. I wanted to get to Leader McCombie briefly because we've brought this up a couple of times, the prospect of blue-controlled states or democratically controlled states also redistricting in retaliation. Leader, what's your reaction to that?
I don't think anybody should be gerrymandering, Republican or Democrat. I think, and the professor and I agree beforehand, we talked about an independent commission. That is how it should be done. Legislators should not be picking their voters. Voters should be picking us.
Totally agree.
Okay, that's you know what? I'm going to leave it there because I've got the two of you agreeing. Thanks so much to House GOP leader Tony McCombie and Chicago-Kent College of Law professor Harold Krent. Thanks, everybody.
You're welcome.
Up next, what recent air quality alerts could mean for your health. Hazy skies here again today as Canadian wildfire smoke is moving across Chicagoland. The last few days, the National Weather Service has issued local air quality alerts. And while there's no alert for today, some are raising concerns about the impact the smoke could be having on people's health. Joining us now are Dr. Juanita Mora, a respiratory doctor and board director with the American Lung Association, And on Zoom from Champaign, Illinois, state climatologist Trent Ford. Welcome back to you both. Thanks for joining us. Trent Ford, I want to start with you, please, because we've had several days of air quality alerts, still pretty hazy today. Tell us what these alerts mean.
Yeah, so the alerts are a combination from the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and the National Weather Service. So the EPA monitors air quality, the concentrations of a number of pollutants, including particulate matter, which is just little bitty solids in the air that we can breathe in that really harm us, our respiratory system, ozone, nitrogen dioxide, so on and so forth. And when those concentrations that are measured on the ground get to a certain point, they surpass what are different levels unhealthy for sensitive individuals, those who have pre-existing health conditions, unhealthy for all populations, so on and so forth. Once they get to that level, then the EPA works with the National Weather Service to send out these alerts, like a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning or an extreme heat advisory, so that that folks can take heed and protect themselves from what can be, in some cases, a pretty dangerous health situation.
And Trent, what can you tell us about the Canadian wildfires and the smoke that's been settling over the city to cause this?
Yeah, so the wildfire smoke has really been in the crosshairs in Chicago and across much of the Midwest for the last week or so. But in reality, the wildfires have been burning really since the spring. In some ways controlled, some ways uncontrolled. What happened is last week when we had those storms move through midweek, Wednesday, Thursday, they changed the wind direction from primarily south, which is why it was really hot and humid for a long time, to primarily northwest. And that dropped the temperature, dropped the dew point. So everybody was happy as far as how comfortable the air was. But it also brought in that wildfire smoke from the northwest, from that part of Western Canada, and with it those elevated levels of particulate matter and ozone in particular that makes for unhealthy air situation. And that's really stuck around. It's gotten better over the last couple of days. When we look at the forecast, it's going to improve as we unfortunately start to see that air come more out of the south as we heat up again. But for now, yeah, we've had this string of days where we've had some pretty poor air quality across much of the city of Chicago.
And Dr. Mora, what is the impact on people's respiratory health when we have this poor air quality?
Of course, and this is what I've been seeing in clinic, really in kids and adults, because these particles are so tiny that they're 1/30th the diameter of one hair on our head.
Oh, wow.
And they enter through the eyes, so cause burning of the eyes. They enter through our nose, that nasal congestion, sinus pressure. Then they enter through our mouth, going directly to our lungs. And for people with underlying lung disease like asthma or COPD or emphysema, wheezing, shortness of breath, and it goes on to make an inflammatory cascade into other organs as well.
What precautions do people need to take?
Well, when we're looking at the zones, absolutely red. When we're looking at maroon, we're looking at purple. And Chicago was the most contaminated city on the whole planet. We have to make sure, one, that if people are working outdoors or being outdoors for a long time, that they wear an N95 mask or more, because these particles, a surgical mask is not enough. Two, that if they have underlying lung disease, that they're taking their controller medications and have a rescue inhaler on hand in case they get into trouble. Three, that if they don't have to be outdoors, please not to be outdoors as well too. And not the time to be exercising outside or taking the kids out to the park. And number four that I always tell them as well too is that if you've been outdoors, coming back home, taking a shower, changing your clothes, doing nasal saline lavages to get all the particles out of our nose, etc.
Okay. Trent, the last time air quality was this much of a concern was June 2023. I think a lot of us probably remember that summer. Can we expect this to be more of an issue in the future with extreme weather becoming more of a national concern? Is this our new normal?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, at face value, wildfires, or at least the length and intensity of wildfire season in Western North America, so parts of the US and Canada, has been increasing. So we've seen a longer and more intense wildfire season, and that's projected to continue as our climate continues to warm. And so what that means is it increases the risk of, when we get the right atmospheric conditions, the wind blowing out of the northwest, some nice sinking air, what we call subsidence from the top of the atmosphere that allows that particulate matter to sink down to where we can breathe it in. It increases the risk of all of those things coming together and increasing how often we have to deal with this. And like I mentioned, unfortunately, with the way the direction of the winds, we often this time of the year consider northwest flow to be very pleasant because it's dry, it's not humid, it's cool. But unfortunately, when those wildfires are burning, it can also mean an increased risk of poor air quality.
Yeah. And Trent, Chicago was ranked #1 for worst air quality in the world on Thursday, as Dr. Mora mentioned. Why do you think conditions got so bad compared to other major cities?
A combination of bad luck and just the size of Chicago. So the particulate matter and ozone, but particularly the particulate matter, are something that we do deal with in certain neighborhoods consistently in Chicago, but not nearly to the level of what was brought by the wildfires. So that pollution was on top of what is already kind of a baseline of higher concentrations of certain types of pollutants, just because of all the activity, the cars, the transportation, the HVAC systems in Chicago. The other part, the bad luck part, was the fact that, for most of the last week or so, we've seen the highest concentrations of those pollutants farther north into parts like Green Bay, Minneapolis. And unfortunately, right around that Friday to Saturday mark, it shifted down and really blasted the Chicagoland area with a poor air quality. So like I mentioned, over the last few days, we've seen it slowly begin to lessen at least a little bit. And by the end of the week, the forecasts show pretty decent air quality as we heat up again. But yeah, just an unfortunate timing with everything going on in the city, a very popular weekend and poor air quality.
Dr. Mora, we've got about 20 seconds left. We just had a lot of festivals this weekend. Have you noticed an uptick in patients experiencing problems from this air?
So I had clinic on Thursday and on Saturday. So I saw kids who had been at Lollapalooza who had wheezed. I saw kids with really burning eyes as well too, shortness of breath, people who had never had a cough coming in with cough symptoms as well too. So this is real. And I tell people, if you can see it, you can breathe it.
All right, take care of yourself, folks. Okay, that is where we'll leave it. My thanks to Dr. Juanita Mora and state climatologist Trent Ford. Up next, a new play about tennis legend Billie Jean King. A local theater is serving up a new play about a groundbreaking athlete and champion of gender equality. Tennis icon Billie Jean King's life and career are the subject of a new production at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater. The play takes King's life from the court to the stage, telling her journey in becoming a Grand Slam champion and fighter for gender equality while enduring her own personal struggles. Here's Mark Vitale with the story.
You know Billie Jean King, the American tennis icon with 39 Grand Slam titles, who also became a household name in the fight for gender equality. Now she's making a return, not to center court, but to center stage in a new play about her life. It's called Billie Jean, and it's playing at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater.
It's very appropriately sort of here and Shakespearean in the size and scope of the story and of, her being such a hero.
The play takes audiences through various chapters of Billie Jean's life, starting from her days as an enthusiastic kid finding inspiration on a tennis court to dominating singles and doubles matches at Wimbledon, and winning the 1973 Battle of the Sexes against Bobby Riggs. To portray the sport on stage, lead actress Shalina Kennedy had some large tennis shoes to fill.
She's got a very particular serve and a very particular aggressive style, and she's got a very famous backhand. And so I felt like it was really important to get the physicality of that. And especially with this unique way that we're portraying tennis on stage. It's not literal tennis. You're not really seeing rackets and balls, but you are seeing our bodies somewhere between dance and movement and tennis, portraying the game and portraying their style. So I really wanted to get that right.
The play also covers the rise and fall of Billie Jean's relationships with both platonic and romantic partners and with herself, turning love into more than just a score on the court.
It's a love story with her partner Alana, but it's also a story about the love of community, the love of athletics, the love of women playing a game, the love of tennis. Say, yes, it's a story about sports. Yes, it is a story about a great, singular achiever, but she is the first one to say, this is we, it's not me.
Actress and comedian Lily Tomlin was part of the team that developed the play. She said her role was to protect feminist history.
But I didn't have to do that. They got it right.
Although Tomlin doesn't personally know Billie Jean very well, she says the tennis legend's life story offers something for everyone.
Well, you don't have to be a sports fan or an athlete to appreciate Billie Jean. She just did everything. If you've ever been underestimated or dismissed or told to stay in your own lane, you can relate to Billie Jean.
Let's give him a show.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
Incidentally, Billie Jean King has lived in Chicago for at least part of the year for decades. Billie Jean plays at Chicago Shakespeare Theater through August 10th. You can check out our website for more on that conversation with actress and comedian Lily Tomlin. And that's our show for this Monday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thanks for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that contributes to public safety policy and guidelines.